Hey guys, welcome back. We are here to talk about all the books that I read in November. I know this video is a little bit late. It just couldn't be helped with everything that has been going on. In fact, I actually did film this video at the end of October, but I went to edit it and there was no sound. I completely messed it up somehow. So, here we are again, take two. In the month of November, I ended up finishing 6 books. A lot of that is owed to audiobooks. It has been such a busy month. I've been going nonstop, and I really do actually miss just curling up with a book so much, but it just couldn't be helped. We ended up taking a surprise vacation to go see my mom for the week of Thanksgiving break, and I wouldn't have exchanged it for anything. It was a really nice visit and we had a lot of fun. There is actually a reading vlog from kind of the beginning of the month where I share some of the things that we were up to if you want to go check that out. In that video, I talk about a lot of the activities that my kids were involved in, as well as a little free library exchange, trade, I don't know what you call them, a little free. We go around my neighborhood trying to get rid of some books through little free libraries, and there's a bit of a book haul and finishing up my reading challenge that I did for the year. So if that sounds like something you would like, you can definitely go check that out. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about the books that I read in November. We're first going to start off with a book called Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I don't know why I introduced it like that, as if no one has heard of this book. This is obviously a reread for me, and I am so thrilled that I ended up rereading it. I did actually reread this towards the beginning of the month. Before I even knew I was going to Washington, I did ask my mom if she wanted to go to Forks, Washington and do all the Twilight stuff, but my little sister said that really there's nothing there. And it's quite a journey away from where my mom actually lives. My mom lives closer to the southern border by Oregon, and we did go on a lot of drives. Like, we went to Idaho, we also went to northern Washington, but we went kind of the opposite direction of Forks. Summer is gonna be really busy, but maybe next fall I could try and go visit my mom again and we can go try to do the Forks thing. However, I did still feel very placed in the world of Twilight when we were in Washington, because when we drove up north, we went to Leavenworth, which is like a little German town. We did that for Thanksgiving. The drive up there is just amazing, and I couldn't stop thinking about the scenes, especially in Eclipse, which is the third book in the Twilight series, because in Eclipse it's getting to be more winter time, there's snow on the ground and everything. So it definitely took me back to Eclipse and Twilight, and the way the mountains are with the snow and the pine trees and the dense lush forest and the fog, the way the fog just like sits in the valleys of the mountains and stuff. I mean, it was absolutely incredibly beautiful. I will try to remember to upload some photos from our trip. Yeah, I couldn't stop taking pictures while we were there. Obviously, I don't think that I need to explain this book at all, so we're just going to skip over that and we're going to move on to another book called They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. This follows a girl named Jill. She is a senior and she's finally in the not-so-secret society at her prep school and enjoying all of the perks. However, a past incident involving her best friend's murder may not be the story that she was led to believe, and her perfect life begins to implode. For dark academia lovers, this seemed like it was going to be a 5-star kind of book for me, but to be honest, it was really forgettable. I almost wonder if there isn't just too many books trying to piggyback off these elite secret societies, prep school, and highly competitive students for grades and to get into Ivy League schools, that they're all just kind of feeling like the same thing. And I'm in particular thinking of a book called The Truants. Again, I feel that I really enjoyed that one at the time. I think I even enjoyed that one more than I actually enjoyed this one at the time of reading it, but it's still kind of forgettable. And Bunny is a little bit unhinged, and it goes into a different kind of horror genre, I would say, that makes it more memorable, but the premise is still basically the same. I ended up having to actually look back at the summary to remember what this book was about myself. I can't even say that I particularly liked any characters. They all seemed very basic. So Needless to say, this was kind of disappointing. On the plus side, the trash truck is now coming around, so that's what you probably hear in the background outside. I'm sorry. But on the plus side, which is kind of funny because I'm actually going to be getting rid of this book, so on the plus side, I will have more space on my shelves because I have been carrying this book around for quite a long time. The next book I read was Doll Factory by Elizabeth. I hate that sticker. It like always covers up her name. Elizabeth McNeil. And this one was really, really good. I do think that I was not expecting the story structure that it delivered. I did kind of have to circle back around. I had a little bit difficult time connecting to it at first. I kind of felt a little confused because was just a little confused about the perspectives, I would say. But once I got the hang of it, this ended up being an incredible book. It is so twisted by the end of it. I think another thing that really threw me is that it's called The Doll Factory, but I feel like that's more or less like the place where the catalyst begins, because it's not really about a doll factory. And then it is, of course, the metaphor of doll factory that you can infer while you go through this book. But anyways, at the end of it, I realized that this is an incredibly interesting story structure. We essentially follow three characters. We follow Iris, who works at a doll factory, or she did when you first start the book, but she wants to be a painter. And then we have this like street urchin character. Iris ends up engaging in this affair, and this urchin character, he knows Iris because he like sews doll clothes or something like that. And he knows Silas because he brings him treasures for his collection. And this street urchin character, it's so weird because like he doesn't have a name. He's literally called just like the street urchin. So he introduces Iris and Silas, which leads the story into this really dark, twisted tale. And it's absolutely incredible. But I do think that it is worth a reread now that I kind of got a handle on like how it's told, because I would definitely say that it's a bit of a slow build up, because first you're learning all about Iris for like the longest time, and you're going off on this affair that she is engaging in and her life and the people in her life. And I think that I kept waiting for the next thing to happen, that I was a little disconnected from her storyline. That's kind of where it was slow for me. But once I figured out where her story was going to end up taking us, I was like, oh my God. Okay, I need to like read this again. So the next book I read was Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This is one that I featured in the reading vlog from the beginning of the month. As I was driving around and doing stuff, I was listening to this book and then the next book as well. This is the third Rachel Harrison book that I have read. And I've been really loving her version of horror, from Such Sharp Teeth to Black Sheep. Her stories are not exactly scary. At least they're not scary for me. I know that there are some people who have like different thresholds of what they consider as scary, but to me, I don't think they're scary. I think they're a lot of fun. But if you're not really a fan of gruesome blood and guts, jump scare horror, I think that these are really great. Cackle, however, was definitely a different vibe from the other books that I have read. This is about a woman named Anne who was dumped from her longtime boyfriend and is really struggling to deal. So she leaves the busy city of Manhattan for a small town in upstate New York for a fresh start. When Anne meets Sophie, Annie, is it Anne or Annie? My notes say Annie. So when Annie meets Sophie, who is this dazzling, magnetic new friend, she thinks that it's absolutely wonderful. However, it does start to occur to her that not everyone feels that about Sophie. A lot of people in this small town are almost afraid of her, and she just can't figure out why. But the closer they get, the more time they spend together, she starts to see some odd behavior that Sophie is partaking in. And then, of course, the story continues on, which you must discover on your own. So for the most part, I did really like this, but I almost felt that sometimes it was a little too odd, especially when you kind of get into, where was it? Maybe it was like the spiders. I can't remember. There was a point that I remember just thinking, okay, this might just be like too weird for my taste, you know? But eventually did hook me in. However, my lasting impressions were that I didn't quite end up liking the ending. My lasting impressions were that this book was more this giant allegory for like bad relationships and codependency, which you see through Annie, and independence. And also, Annie was really just quite annoying. Like, I know you're sad about your ex and all that, but her character definitely needed more dynamic and personality, more so than this, like, boo hoo, I'm gonna drink myself to sleep every night and cry about my sad life. But then, now that I'm talking about this book again, like, I can definitely see. I see both sides of it. I see that, like, maybe the reading experience of Annie was kind of insufferable. But then if you also look at it, like, there's definitely people out there that act like that. They too are insufferable, but it's kind of funny as well. I don't know. I ended up giving this book like 3 stars because I am kind of just torn between the two. Did I really like this book? Is it kind of annoying? I don't know. Either way, I still look forward to reading more from this author, even though this one is not in particularly my favorite of the ones I've read from her so far. The next book I read was Everland. This is technically a reread as well. And I did read this for a Read It or Unhaul It challenge, also featured in that vlog. Remember reading it, and then I was carrying it around for the longest time, and I just couldn't remember how much I liked it. And then I also thought, well, maybe I need to keep it because it's a really cool cover. Maybe I want to continue on with the series eventually. I am so glad that I did this little reread. It started out incredibly fun, incredibly interesting, and I started asking myself, how did I not remember this? This is a Peter Pan retelling story set in a dystopian steampunk world with this deadly virus that ends up killing most of the adults, the adult population. And so what is left are some kids who tend to be showing some immunity. The organization Hook, you know, like Captain Hook, is not actually just one person. It is this man who works under this organization called Hook, who was organized by the Queen. And our captain from the organization Hook is working alongside scientists to seek a cure. So they're seeking out, trying to find children who are showing immunity so that they can study them and make a cure. So it actually seems kind of positive, right? I really thought that all of the Easter eggs to the original Peter Pan were so good, but they kind of made it make more sense within this world. For instance, Neverland itself is not like this, you know, go into another dimension and you're on this island. No, it's actually like an underground world that's just below, you know, in the underground tunnels and stuff like that, which I thought was a really cool change to that idea, you know, a safe haven for these runaways and people hiding out for the kids. Then we have our Tinkerbell character. She's not actually a fairy, but she is a tinkerer. So her name is actually Belle, and she is a tinkerer, and she made these mechanical wings. And the fairy dust is not really fairy dust, it is gold powder, which I guess in this world they don't really need gold, so they like, it's so salt. Gold is really soft, but it's also really reflective. So they use this dust. She uses this dust to sprinkle down in dark places so she can tell the depth so that like she doesn't come plummeting to the earth when she's like flying around. So I was like, that is such a very inventive idea to explain these things. But then there's a bunch of other explanations for all these things as well, and I just thought it was so much fun. However, come about halfway, it did kind of, once you're introduced to the way that Wendy Spinelli set up the story, then you kind of get more involved into the plot and to the love story. And I have to be honest, it just started going in one ear out the other. At some point I kind of quit caring about it, so that was kind of disappointing, but it was still very satisfying to enjoy the beginning, because I will remember how creative that whole setup was. But anyways, I do not think I will continue on with the series, and I can clear this book from my shelves and it can find a new home. And the last book I'm going to tell you about is The Ballerinas by Rachel Kapelke Dale. I'm not really sure how to say her name. This is a really good book. I personally really like ballerinas. I think that the lifestyle of ballerinas is just really fascinating. This follows Daphne. She's a ballet dancer, but she left about 13 years ago from, I think they call it a company. But she's returning now as a director and a writer for a new ballet that she has developed. However, returning to the women and the past and a past fling that she had brings up a lot of issues from the past, including an old injury that haunts the group of friends and the realization about the sorts of things that young dancers will do to be the best, the pressures of competition and secrets. I really like this story. Being a ballerina in itself is such an interesting way of life. The sacrifices that dancers make because they are passionate about being dancers, the high stakes of not making it, the tragedy of being mediocre, not standing out and getting leads, the possibility that any small thing can either make or break their career, the sexism in the industry, at least in this book in particular, the way this book explains it, if there's very specific like female roles and male roles, and the fact that male dancers are really difficult to come by, and the kind of privileges that males get within the industry, and just a lot of things like that were brought up in this book. But there's a lot of sports that are also like that. For instance, ice skating, I think, has a lot of very similar issues between the male and female roles, dancing partners, solo dancing, behind the scenes exploitive behaviors, again, the ratio from male to female athletes. And I think that in ballet, there's just like a lot more. Like gymnastics also have coaches or whatever that have, sordid pasts of exploiting gymnasts. In every industry, really, there are these crimes. But at least one difference in gymnastics is that women compete against women, but in dancing, where you need to have, a male partner dancing with a female partner for most of these roles, there's a lot of co-ed issues on top of that. So yeah, it's very complex. There's just a lot. So anyways, I thought this book was really well done to cover a lot of those issues. This also covers female issues when it comes to like starting a family at a certain age. If you can be a dancer, your weight must always stay at a very like specific place, right? So getting pregnant can set you back almost a year. That's a year of not working out, a year of just all the things that come with being a mom, taking time off. And these dancers don't feel that if they want to be the best, that they can afford to take that time off. So then by the time they get to retirement age for a dancer, they're almost too old to even have children. So that conversation is a big part of this storyline as well, which is so interesting. The different viewpoints of like, well, dancing is more important to me than being a mom, or to some other dancers, being a mom is more important to them than dancing, or whatever. But it is kind of sad that they do kind of have to pick one or the other in this way. Another big thing that I'm really interested in are like eating disorder stories. And I feel like in a lot of these dancing stories, there's a big heavy focus on eating disorders, and that was not really featured in this book, which I thought was really interesting because it gave room to talk about all the other issues more than just eating disorders. So yeah, I do think this book was incredibly well done. Okay, now that it is already like 5 days till Christmas, and we're coming towards the second half of December now, and this video is incredibly late. Thank you all so much for watching. It seems kind of weird with all the end of year content to do like a specific everything I read in December. I probably should do a video like that anyways. Alright guys, that was everything that I read in November. It was actually a pretty good month, which was such a relief because October was just tragic in that department. I hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.